There's a scene in Dream Scenario where a man, living an ordinary life, begins to notice something odd. Strangers start mentioning him, saying they've seen him in their dreams. At first, it feels almost surreal, nothing too alarming. But then, the dreams take a darker turn, and he becomes a part of something bigger, something he can't quite understand or control. He has no idea why it's happening, and it's quickly spiraling out of his hands. What's unsettling about these films is that the characters are trapped in something far bigger than themselves, whether it's a moral reckoning, an obsession that consumes them, or a force that moves beyond their understanding. Their choices may feel like their own, but every step only leads them deeper into an inevitable fate. Let's dive into some of these films. Our first film on the list is Dream Scenario. It follows Paul Matthews, a regular professor who suddenly becomes the subject of everyone's dreams. At first, it seems harmless. Strangers mention him in passing, saying they dream of him doing random, even mundane things. It's weird, but Paul is intrigued, even a little flattered. However, things quickly take a violent turn when the dreams start to shift. People dream of him hurting them. At first, it's just small things, but as the violence escalates, Paul becomes a figure of fear. The dreams turn darker, and the world begins to turn on him. The horror isn't from any supernatural threat, but from the power of perception. As the dreams become more violent and disturbing, Paul's life spirals out of control. People begin blaming him for things he's never done, and despite his efforts to prove his innocence, he can't stop the chaos. His personal relationships crumble, his career falls apart, and soon he's a pariah. What makes this horror so unsettling is the fact that Paul is powerless to stop the nightmare unfolding around him. In the final moments of the film, Paul takes a desperate step to reconnect with his wife Janet by entering a dream-sharing device. He hopes to find solace in her peaceful dream, a brief escape from the chaos. But when he finds her, she remains calm and untouched by the madness surrounding them, highlighting the emotional distance between them. His last words,
"I wish this was real."
Our second film on the list is The House That Jack Built. It follows Jack, a highly intelligent yet deeply disturbed man, as he recounts his life as a serial killer. The story is presented as a series of vignettes, with Jack narrating his murders and the twisted rationale behind them. Each kill is more gruesome and calculated than the last, showing his descent into further madness and self-justification. The film doesn't shy away from violence and disturbing imagery, challenging the audience to understand Jack's deranged mind. At the start, Jack is obsessed with building a house, a metaphorical structure representing his desire to create something monumental. He views his killings as the foundation of this house, each murder a brick in his grand design. This obsession with construction and perfection drives his actions, leading him to commit increasingly heinous acts in the name of art. In the end, Jack's obsession with his killings and his belief that he could escape the consequences comes crashing down. As he's pursued, he reaches the final point where there is no more escape. He is caught not by the law, but by something far more inevitable, his own sins. As Jack is dragged into what seems like hell, he faces the full weight of his actions. Is this hell truly a place of eternal punishment? Or is it just a manifestation of Jack's own mind, a symbolic representation of his guilt and regret? However, the old man, a figure representing the weight of Jack's sins that led him to hell, tells Jack that there's a way to ascend from hell, a bridge leading to redemption. However, Jack realizes the bridge is broken and suggests that the only way to ascend is by climbing the narrow walls on either side. Faced with this choice, Jack refuses to accept his guilt and attempts to climb, clinging to his delusions of superiority and control. Despite his efforts, he fails. The consequence of his failure is a descent to the very bottom of hell. Jack's refusal to take the path of redemption and his relentless pursuit of self-justification seals his fate. Hell, or whatever it is he faces, is not just a literal place, but a reflection of the internal torment Jack has created for himself through his actions. Our third film on the list is Saint Maud. It follows Maud, a deeply religious nurse who becomes obsessed with saving the soul of her terminally ill patient, Amanda. As Maud's faith intensifies, so does her descent into religious fanaticism, blurring the line between devotion and delusion. She believes she is receiving direct signs from God, guiding her toward a higher purpose. As Maud spends more time with Amanda, she becomes convinced that she is receiving signs from God, reinforcing her belief that her mission is real. After some miscommunication with Amanda, Maud is dismissed from her care, shattering her sense of purpose. She believed she was sent to save Amanda's soul, but after being mocked and rejected, her faith grows increasingly unhinged. Isolated and desperate, she searches for signs from God, experiencing what she believes are divine interventions. A failed attempt to connect with others only deepens her despair, convincing her that God has a greater plan, one that requires complete devotion and ultimate sacrifice. Maud visits Amanda one last time, convinced she must complete her divine mission. Amanda at first seems remorseful, indulging Maud's religious beliefs, but then cruelly shatters them, mocking her and denying God's existence. In Maud's eyes, Amanda transforms into a demonic figure, and believing she is battling the devil itself, Maud violently stabs her to death. Following this act, Maud returns to her apartment, experiencing what she perceives as true enlightenment. She envisions herself with radiant angelic wings, fully convinced that she has achieved divine favor. Dressed in a white robe and a self-made shroud adorned with seashells, a reference to St. Maud, she walks to the beach at sunrise. In her final moment, she sets herself ablaze, believing she is ascending to heaven. But in the film's last harrowing frames, reality intrudes. We see Maud, not as an angel, but as a woman screaming in agony, engulfed in flames. Her so-called ascension is nothing more than a horrifying delusion, making Saint Maud a chilling exploration of faith, madness, and the terrifying power of self-deception. Our fourth film, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, presents horror in the form of an inescapable cosmic judgment. Stephen, a successful surgeon, befriends Martin, the son of a patient who died under his care. What begins as an awkward but seemingly harmless relationship soon turns into something far more sinister. Martin reveals that, as punishment for his father's death, Stephen's family will suffer a mysterious affliction. One by one, they will lose the ability to walk, refuse to eat, and eventually die, unless Stephen kills one of them himself. At first, Stephen dismisses Martin's words as the ramblings of a disturbed boy, but as the sickness takes hold of his children, he is forced to confront the terrifying reality of the situation. No amount of logic, bargaining, or medical expertise can stop it. The punishment follows a strict, almost mythological structure, as if dictated by an unseen force that ensures balance must be restored. This aligns with the film's heavy inspiration from Greek tragedy, particularly the story of Agamemnon, who was cursed to sacrifice his daughter for the sins of the past. In the end, faced with an impossible choice, Stephen blindfolds himself and spins in circles, firing a gun at random until one of his family members is killed. The decision is stripped of any morality, reduced to sheer chance, a brutal and indifferent form of justice. But one thing remains certain. Stephen cannot escape the weight of his past, and the universe, in its cold, merciless way, has made sure of it. Our fifth and final film is The Turin Horse, a film that isn't for everyone. Unlike conventional horror, it doesn't rely on violence or even a traditional narrative structure. Instead, it presents a slow, relentless descent into oblivion, echoing themes of existential despair and the absurdity of life. The film follows a farmer and his daughter as they live in a barren, windswept landscape, trapped in an endless cycle of mundane, grueling tasks. Their existence is bleak and repetitive, fetching water, eating boiled potatoes, dressing, undressing, until, piece by piece, their world starts to fall apart. The film's pacing mirrors the existential philosophy of thinkers like Camus, who explored the futility of life and the absurdity of existence. In The Turin Horse, the characters' lives seem suspended in time, devoid of meaning or progress. It all begins with their horse, which suddenly refuses to eat or move, as if surrendering to some unseen force. Then strange disruptions occur. A visitor warns them of an impending doom. Gypsies pass through before being driven away, and one day their well runs dry. Yet the most unsettling aspect isn't any of these events. It's the inescapable decay of life itself. Each day, the wind howls louder, their rations dwindle, and the light fades until even the flame of their lamp refuses to ignite. In The Turin Horse, the horror feels like a cosmic punishment simply by living. It's the crushing weight of existence in a universe that offers no answers. There is no escape, no catharsis, just a slow, inevitable fading into darkness. The farmer and his daughter do not die in a dramatic climax. Instead, they simply sit in the silence, enveloped by a void that has already consumed everything. Their fate is not one of external judgment, but the quiet, relentless collapse of all things, much like the existential death Camus speaks of. The acceptance of life's futility without the hope of transcendence.